The stars outside the observation deck burned cold and distant. Commander Yuna stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the small human shuttle approach the Starfall Citadel. Her silver-scaled skin caught the light from the control panels around her. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, the eyes like polished obsidian and claws that could tear through steel. Behind her, a dozen Valori officers waited in silence. They were all watching the same thing. One tiny ship, one human. This was what the Terran Alliance had sent to negotiate peace between two empires. Yuna let out a slow laugh. It was not a kind sound. "Is this a joke?" she asked. Her voice echoed through the observation deck. "We have been at war with humanity for 3 years. We have burned their colonies. They have destroyed our fleets. And now, at the moment of negotiation, they send us one soldier and one ship." Officer Quan stepped forward. He was younger than the others, his scales still bright and unmarked by battle. "Perhaps they mean to insult us, Commander." "Perhaps," Yuna said. She turned away from the viewport. "Or perhaps they truly believe one human is enough. Either way, I intend to teach them a lesson about respect." The shuttle docked with a soft clang that vibrated through the station. Yuna walked toward the docking bay with her officers following close behind. Her boots clicked against the metal floor in a steady rhythm. She was not worried. She was not impressed. She was only curious to see what kind of fool humans had sent to die. The docking bay doors slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. Steam rolled across the floor as the shuttle's ramp lowered. And then the human stepped out. His name was Tay. Sergeant Tay of the 7th Terran Recon Division. He was not tall by Velari standards. He stood just under 6 feet, with black hair cut short and eyes the color of dark earth. He wore a simple military uniform, gray and unadorned. No medals, no weapons, no armor. Yuna studied him the way a predator studies prey. She saw soft skin that would tear under the lightest claw. She saw no fangs, no venom glands, no natural defenses of any kind. Humans were famous across the galaxy for being fragile. They had no exoskeletons like the Krell, no regeneration like the Varathi, no psychic shields like the Pale Ones. They were, by every measurement, the weakest intelligent species in known space, and yet they had fought the Valori Empire to a standstill. Yuna did not understand it. She did not like things she could not understand. She approached Tay slowly, her officers spreading out behind her like wings. The human did not move. He did not flinch. He simply watched her with those calm, steady eyes. "So," Yuna said, stopping just a few feet in front of him, "you are the great negotiator, the hope of the Terran Alliance." She tilted her head, letting her gaze travel over him from head to toe. "I must say, I expected more." Tay said nothing. Yuna began to circle him, moving slowly, deliberately. "Your species confuses me, human. You have no natural weapons. Your bodies break so easily. I have seen your soldiers die from wounds that would barely slow a Valori child." She stopped behind him, leaning close to his ear. "And yet you keep fighting? Why is that?" "Because we have things worth fighting for," Tay said. His voice was quiet but steady. Yuna laughed again. She walked around to face him, her claws clicking together. "Things worth fighting for? How touching. How romantic." She leaned in close, her breath cold against his face. "But tell me, Sergeant, what good are your precious ideals when your body is torn apart? What good is courage when you have no strength to back it up?" The officers behind her chuckled. Some of them whispered to each other in the Valori tongue, making jokes about human fragility. Tay heard them. He understood the tone, even if he did not know the words. He still did not react. This annoyed Yuna more than anything. She had expected fear. She had expected anger. She had expected something she could use against him. But this human gave her nothing. He just stood there, calm and unshaken, like a stone in a river. "You came here to negotiate peace," Yuna said, stepping back. "Your alliance wants an end to the war. They want trade agreements and mutual defense pacts and all the other pretty words your diplomats love so much." She spread her arms wide. "But why should we agree? Why should the Valori Empire lower itself to treat with a species so obviously inferior?" "Because the war is costing you more than you admit," Tay said, The laughter stopped. Yuna's eyes narrowed. Tay continued, his voice still calm. Your empire has lost 18 capital ships in the past year. Your supply lines to the outer colonies are stretched thin. You have won battles, Commander, but you are not winning the war. Neither are we. That is why we both need peace. Yuna stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just decided to make things very difficult. You are bold, she said. I will give you that. But boldness is not enough. The Valori do not respect words. We respect strength. We respect courage. We respect those who can prove themselves through action. She turned to her officers. And so, I propose a test. Officer Quan stepped forward. Commander? The path of flames, Yuna said. A murmur went through the officers. Some of them looked uncertain. Others looked excited. All of them looked surprised. Tay did not know what the path of flames was, but he could tell from their reactions that it was nothing good. Yuna turned back to him, her dark eyes gleaming. The path of flames is an ancient Valori trial. A kilometer-long corridor filled with plasma vents, radiation bursts, and gravitational anomalies. It was designed to test the strongest of our warriors. Many have attempted it. Many have died. Even with full battle armor, survival is not guaranteed. She stepped closer to Tay, her voice dropping to a near whisper. If you complete the path, I will consider your alliance. I will listen to your terms. I will treat your species as equals. He paused. But if you fail, if you die or surrender or retreat, then the negotiations end. Your alliance will receive nothing from us but continued war. Tay looked at her steadily. And if I refuse the test? Then I will take your refusal as proof that humans are cowards, Yuna said. And I will send your broken shuttle back to your alliance with a message written in your blood. The observation deck was silent. Every Velor officer watched, waiting to see what the human would do. Tay thought about his home. He thought about the colonies that had burned. He thought about the millions of people who were counting on this mission to succeed. If he refused, they would all suffer. If he failed, they would all suffer. There was no safe choice. There was only the choice between certain defeat and possible death. He met Yuna's eyes. I accept, he said. Yuna smiled her cold, cruel smile. Then tomorrow, human, you will walk the path of flames, and we will see if your courage is real or just another empty human word. She turned and walked away, her officers following behind her. Their laughter echoed through the docking bay. Tay stood alone in the empty space, the weight of what he had just agreed to pressing down on his shoulders. He did not know if he could survive. He did not know if survival was even possible. But he knew one thing for certain. He would not let his people down. They gave. Etched a small room deep inside the station. It was not a prison cell, but it felt like one. The walls were bare metal. The bed was a thin slab bolted to the floor. There was no window, only a small screen that showed a view of the stars outside. The screen was probably meant to make him feel less trapped. It did not work. Tay sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. His mind was racing, but his body was still. He had learned long ago how to keep calm on the outside, even when everything inside him was screaming. It was a skill that had saved his life many times. He hoped it would save his life again tomorrow. A soft knock came at the door. Tay looked up. Enter, he said. The door slid open, and a young Valori officer stepped inside. She was smaller than Commander Yuna, with scales that shimmered like pale moonlight. Her eyes were large and dark, and there was something in them that looked almost like concern. She wore the uniform of a junior officer, and she moved with the careful steps of someone who was not sure they belonged. I am Officer Na, she said. I have been assigned as your handler until the trial tomorrow. Tay nodded. Handler. Is that what they call it? Na hesitated. It means I am responsible for your needs. Food, water, information. She paused. I am also supposed to make sure you do not try to escape. I am not going to escape, Tay said. I know. Na stepped further into the room. letting the door close behind her. That is what worries me. She stood near the wall, her hands clasped in front of her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the station's life support systems filled the silence. You should not have accepted the trial, Na said finally. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. The path of flames is not something you can survive. It was designed to kill. Even our strongest warriors, our best soldiers, they wear full battle armor when they attempt it. Power suits with thermal shielding and radiation filters and gravity dampeners. And even then, many of them die. Tay looked at her. How many? Na did not answer right away. She seemed to be calculating in her head. In the last 10 years, 43 warriors have attempted the path. 11 survived. The rest died or were so badly injured that they could never fight again. 11 out of 43. Tay said. That is about 1 in 4. With full armor, Na said, with all the protection our technology can provide. She took a step closer, her voice dropping lower. You have nothing. Your species has no natural defenses. You have no armor to wear. If you walk that path tomorrow, you will die. It is not a possibility. It is a certainty. Tay was quiet for a moment. He could see that she meant what she said. She was not trying to scare him. She was trying to warn him. That was an unexpected kindness from an enemy. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Na looked away. I do not know. Perhaps because I do not think this is fair. The commander is using you to make a point. She wants to show that humans are weak. She wants to prove that your species does not deserve respect. But this is not a test of strength. It is an execution disguised as a trial. Tay stood up and walked to the small screen on the wall. The stars outside glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, his people were waiting. His family. His friends, the millions who had survived the war, and the millions more who had not. They were all counting on him to bring back peace. I did not come here to win, Tay said, still looking at the stars. I came here to show your people that we are serious about peace. That we are willing to sacrifice everything for it. Sacrifice. Na shook her head. This is not sacrifice. This is suicide, maybe. Tay turned to face her. But if I run, what happens? The commander uses my cowardice as an excuse to continue the war. More people die. More colonies burn. The fighting goes on for years, maybe decades. He took a breath. I cannot let that happen. Not when there is even a small chance that I can stop it. Na stared at him. Her large, dark eyes were filled with something he could not quite read. Confusion, maybe? Or wonder? Or fear? You would die for people who will never know your name, she said. It was not a question, as Tay said simply. Na was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I have fought in many battles. I have seen many warriors face death, but I have never seen anyone accept it the way you do. You are not afraid. You are not angry. You are just calm. I am afraid, Tay admitted. I am very afraid. But fear does not change what I have to do. It just makes it harder. Na nodded slowly, as if she was beginning to understand something she had never understood before. The commander believes humans are weak because you lack natural defenses. She thinks courage is measured by what your body can endure. She thinks strength comes from claws and scales and armor. And what do you think? Tay asked. Na looked at him for a long moment. Her expression shifted, softened. I think courage is measured by what you do when your body cannot endure. I think strength is not about what you are born with. It is about what you choose to do with what you have. Tay smiled faintly. It was the first time he had smiled since arriving on the station. That is a very human way of thinking. Perhaps. Na moved toward the door, then paused. There is something else you should know. The trial will be held in the main observation hall. The entire station will be watching. Thousands of Valori officers and diplomats and soldiers. The commander wants to make your death a spectacle. A lesson for anyone who might think of treating with humans as equals. Then I will give them a different lesson, Tay said. Na tilted her head. What do you mean? I do not know yet, Tay admitted. but I will think of something. Na studied him for a moment longer. Then she nodded and turned to leave. The door slid open in front of her. Officer Na Te called Dot. She stopped and looked back. "Thank you," he said, "for the warning. And for the kindness." Na seemed unsure how to respond. Among the Valori, kindness was not considered a virtue. It was seen as a weakness, a sign of soft thinking. But standing here in this small room, looking at this human who was about to walk to his death for the sake of peace, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught. "Good luck, Sergeant Tay," she said quietly. "I hope you prove me wrong." The door closed behind her and Tay was alone again. He sat back down on the bed and stared at the floor. His mind was still racing, but now it was racing in a different direction. Na had given him information. She had told him about the armor, about the shields, about all the technology that Velari, warriors used to survive the path. He did not have any of those things. But he did have something else. He had his mind. He had his training. He had years of experience surviving in places where he should have died. And he had something that no Valori seemed to understand. He had the will to keep going when everything told him to stop. Tay lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he would walk the path of flames. Tomorrow, he would show the Valori what humans were really made of. But for now, he needed to rest. He would need all his strength for what was coming. The morning came too quickly. Tay woke before the station's artificial dawn. He had not slept well, but he had slept enough. His body felt rested, even if his mind was heavy with thoughts of what was to come. He stood, stretched, and began the simple exercises he had practiced every morning since he was a young soldier. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. To loosen his muscles and sharpen his focus. The routine was familiar, comforting. It reminded him of who he was and why he was here. When the guards came to escort him, he was ready. They led him through long corridors filled with Valori officers. Everyone had stopped their work to stare at the human walking past. Some of them laughed. Some of them whispered insults. Others just watched in silence, curious to see the strange creature that had agreed to walk the path of flames. Tay ignored them all. He kept his eyes forward and his back straight. He walked like a soldier, because that was what he was. The main observation hall was enormous. It stretched upward for dozens of floors, with viewing galleries carved into the walls at every level. Thousands of Valori had gathered to watch the spectacle. Their scales glittered in the harsh lights, creating a sea of silver and blue and pale green. The noise of their voices filled the air like thunder. At the center of the hall, a massive doorway stood closed. Beyond that doorway lay the path of flames. Tay could feel the heat radiating from it, even from where he stood. He could hear the distant roar of plasma vents and the crackling hum of radiation fields. The path was alive, hungry, waiting for its next victim. Commander Yuna stood on a raised platform above the crowd. She wore her ceremonial armor, black and gold, with her rank symbols gleaming on her shoulders. When she saw Tay being led toward the starting line, she smiled her cold smile and raised her hand for silence. The crowd went quiet. "Citizens of the Valori Empire," Yuna announced, her voice amplified throughout the hall. "Today, we witnessed something rare. A human has agreed to walk the path of flames. He claims that his species deserves our respect. He claims that humans are worthy of alliance with our great empire." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Today, we will see if those claims are true," the crowd murmured. Some cheered. Others made sounds of mockery. Yuna gestured toward the massive doorway. The path of flames is 1 kilometer long. It contains plasma vents that reach temperatures of 3,000 degrees. It contains radiation fields that can cook flesh from bone in seconds. It contains gravity wells that can crush a body into paste. She looked down at Tay. Our warriors face this challenge in full battle armor. With shields and cooling systems and every protection our technology can offer, and still, many of them die. She spread her arms wide. But this human has no armor. He has no shields. He has nothing but his soft skin and his fragile bones. Her smile widened. "Let us see how long he lasts," the crowd laughed. The sound echoed through the hall like the roar of a hungry beast. The guards escorted Tay to the starting line. He stood before the massive doorway, feeling the heat washing over him in waves. The metal floor beneath his feet was already warm. He could smell the sharp electric scent of plasma in the air. Na was watching from one of the lower galleries. Her hands were gripping the railing so hard that her claws left marks in the metal. She had seen warriors die on the path. She had seen them burn and scream and beg for mercy. And they had all been wearing armor. They had all been protected. This human had nothing. The doorway began to open. Red light spilled out, along with a wave of heat so intense that the guards had to step back. Inside, Tay could see the path stretching ahead of him. It was a long corridor of fire and death, twisting and turning, filled with vents that erupted in random patterns. The walls glowed with heat. The floor shimmered like water. YUNA called out from her platform. "Are you ready, human? Or have you finally realized the truth of your situation?" Tay did not answer. Instead, he reached up and began to remove his jacket. The crowd went silent. He took off his jacket and dropped it on the floor. Then he removed his boots, his gloves, his outer shirt. He stood at the starting line in nothing but a thin undershirt and his military pants. His feet were bare on the hot metal floor. Officer Na felt her breath catch in her throat. She did not understand what he was doing. Neither did anyone else. Yuna leaned forward on her platform, her eyes narrowing. "What is this? What are you doing?" Tay looked up at her. His voice was calm, clear, carrying across the silent hall. "Your warriors walk the path in armor," he said. "They hide behind shields and cooling systems and technology. They protect themselves from the fire." He took a breath. "I will not hide. I will not protect myself. I will walk your path with nothing but my own body. And when I reach the end, you will see what humans are truly made of." For a long moment, no one spoke. No one moved. The entire hall seemed frozen in disbelief. Then Yuna began to laugh. It was a cold, mocking laugh, filled with contempt. "You are a fool," she said. "A brave fool, perhaps, but a fool all the same. You will burn before you take 10 steps. Tay did not respond. He turned to face the path, and then he stepped forward. The first plasma vent erupted to his left. A column of white-hot fire shot across the corridor, close enough to singe the air near his face. Tay did not flinch. He had been watching the pattern. He had seen the way the vent pulsed and retreated. He timed his movement perfectly, stepping past the fire in the split second between eruptions. The crowd watched, in stunned silence. Another vent erupted ahead of him. Then another. Then another. The path became a maze of fire and death, with plasma bursting from the walls and floor at random intervals. But Tay kept moving. He watched. He calculated. He found the gaps between the flames and slipped through them like water through cracks in stone. His skin was already red from the heat. His lungs burned with every breath, but he did not stop. He did not slow down. He kept walking, step after step. Into the heart of the fire, Na was gripping the railing so hard that her claws had punched through the metal. She was not laughing. She was not mocking. She was watching a human do something impossible. He was walking through the path of flames without armor, and he was still alive. Eunice's smile had faded. She was leaning forward on her platform, her dark eyes fixed on the small figure moving through the corridor of fire. She had expected him to die in the first 10 seconds. She had expected screams and burning flesh and the sweet smell of defeat. But the human kept walking. He kept walking. And he did not stop. Tay had walked 300 meters into the path of flames. His skin was blistered and raw. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. The heat pressed against him from all sides, crushing him, cooking him, trying to break him down into ash and bone, but he kept walking. The plasma vents were coming faster now. They erupted without warning, shooting columns of white fire across the corridor. Tay had to move quickly, darting between the gaps, timing his steps to the rhythm of the flames. It was like dancing on the edge of a knife. One wrong step, one moment of hesitation, and he would be dead. His body was screaming at him to stop. His muscles ached. His feet were burned and bleeding. The thin undershirt he wore was singed in a dozen places, and the skin beneath was red and angry. He could feel his strength draining away with every step, but he did not stop. In the observation galleries above, thousands of Velari watched in complete silence. The laughter had died long ago. The mockery had faded into something else, something that looked almost like fear. No one had ever walked the path like this. No one had ever survived this long without armor. Officer Na was still gripping the railing, her claws buried deep in the metal. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She had stopped thinking about the trial as a spectacle. She had stopped thinking about politics and alliances and the war between their species. All she could think about was the small figure moving through the fire, refusing to fall. Commander Yuna stood rigid on her platform. Her smile was gone, replaced by a tight, hard expression. She had designed this trial to humiliate the human. She had wanted to prove that his species was weak, fragile, unworthy of respect. But instead, she was watching something she could not explain. The human was not dying. He should have been dead 100 times over. The heat alone should have killed him. The radiation should have cooked his organs. The plasma should have burned him to ash. But he kept walking, step after step, through the heart of the fire. Yuna did not understand. She could not understand. Humans had no natural defenses. Their bodies were soft and weak. They broke so easily. And yet this single soldier, was doing something that should have been impossible. At the halfway point, Tay collapsed. His legs gave out beneath him, and he fell to his knees on the burning floor. The metal seared into his skin, and he could smell his own flesh cooking. A sound escaped his lips, something between a groan and a cry of pain. He put his hands down to push himself up, and the palms of his hands blistered instantly. The crowd stirred. Some of them leaned forward, expecting him to stay down, expecting him to surrender, expecting the show to finally end. Yuna felt a flicker of satisfaction. She had known it would end like this. She had known the human would break eventually. They always did, but then Tay pushed himself up. His arms shook. His whole body trembled. Blood dripped from his nose and his ears, running down his face in dark streams. The radiation was tearing him apart from the inside. His organs were failing. His cells were dying. By every measure of biology and physics, he should have been dead. He stood up. The crowd went absolutely silent. Even the roar of the plasma vents seemed to fade into the background. Every eye in the hall was fixed on the human, watching him rise from his knees and stand on his burned and bleeding feet. Tay took a breath. It hurt more than anything he had ever felt. The air was so hot that it scorched his lungs. Every nerve in his body was screaming at him to stop, to lie down, to let the fire take him. His vision was blurring. His thoughts were scattered. He could barely remember where he was or why he was here, but somewhere deep inside him, a voice kept speaking. It was the voice of his training, the voice of his duty, the voice of every soldier who had ever died to protect their people. It told him to keep going. It told him that giving up was not an option. It told him that he was more than his body, more than his pain, more than the limitations of his fragile human form. He took a step.
Ow.
Forward, then another, then another. Na felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not know why. Velari did not cry. Not really. Not like this. But watching the human drag himself forward through the flames, watching him refuse to die even as his body was being destroyed, she felt something break inside her. Something old and hard and certain. She had always believed that strength came from power. From claws and scales and armor. From the things you were born with. But this human had none of those things. And he was still walking. A young Velari soldier stood beside Na in the gallery. He was watching with wide eyes, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. He turned to Na and whispered, "What is he?" Na did not look away from the path. Her voice was soft, almost reverent. "He is human," she said. The final stretch of the path was the worst. It was called the Crushing Point, a section of corridor filled with artificial gravity wells. The gravity in that section was 10 times normal, enough to flatten a warrior in full-power armor. Even the strongest Valori had to sprint through it at full speed, relying on their suits to compensate for the pressure. Without armor, without assistance, the gravity would crush a body into pulp in seconds. Tay entered the crushing point. The gravity hit him like a wall. He felt his legs buckle immediately, his knees slamming into the floor. The pressure was unbelievable. It was as if a giant hand was pressing down on every part of his body at once. His spine compressed. His ribs creaked. His lungs could barely expand enough to take a breath. He could not stand. He could not walk. He could barely move. So he crawled. He put his burned hands on the floor and dragged himself forward. Inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, the gravity pressed down on him with terrible force. His vision was going dark. His heart was struggling to pump blood through his veins. He could feel his body shutting down one system at a time, but he kept crawling. The crowd was not silent anymore, or making sounds, strange sounds that Tay could not identify. He did not know that they were sounds of awe. He did not know that he had done something no one in Velor history had ever done. He did not know that the creature crawling through the crushing point had become something more than a human in the eyes of those watching. He had become a legend. His hand reached out and touched something cool. Metal that was not burning. Air that was not filled with fire. He had reached the end. Tay collapsed at the exit platform, his body finally giving out. Lay on the cool metal floor, his chest heaving, his eyes staring up at nothing. He could not move. He could barely breathe. Every part of him was broken, but he was alive. He had walked the path of flames without armor, and he had survived. The silence in the observation hall was absolute. Thousands of Valors stood frozen in place, staring at the broken human lying on the exit platform. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the plasma vents behind the closed doors seemed to have gone quiet, as if the path itself was paying respect to what had just happened. Tay lay on the cool metal floor, his eyes half closed, his breath coming in short, painful gasps. His skin was burned in too many places to count. His hands were raw flesh. His feet were bleeding. Inside his body, things were failing that he could not feel, damage that would take months to heal, if it healed at all. He had pushed himself beyond every limit that nature had set for the human body. And he had one Commander Yuna descended from her platform. Her steps were slow, measured, her expression unreadable. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. She walked across the observation hall until she stood at the edge of the exit platform, looking down at the human who had done the impossible. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just looked at him, studying him, trying to understand what she was seeing. Tay coughed. Blood came up with it, dark and thick. He turned his head slowly, painfully, to look at her. "You completed the path," Yuna said. Her voice was quiet, almost soft. It was not the voice she had used before. It was not the voice of mockery or contempt. It was the voice of someone whose world had just been turned upside down. "You walked through fire without armor. You survived the crushing point with nothing but your own body." "How?" Tay tried to speak, but his throat was too damaged. He coughed again, clearing it as best he could, and forced the words out in a broken whisper. "Because my people do not measure courage by what our bodies can survive." He looked up at her, and despite everything, his eyes were still fierce, still burning, still alive. "We measure it by what we are willing to sacrifice." Yuna stared at him for a long moment. Around them, the crowd was still silent, still watching, still waiting to see what would happen next. Then slowly, Commander Yuna knelt. A gasp went through the crowd. Valori commanders did not kneel, not to anyone, not to enemy soldiers, not to foreign diplomats, not even to their own highest leaders. Kneeling was an act of submission, of acknowledgement, of respect so deep that it bordered on reverence. For a commander to kneel before an outsider was unthinkable. But Yuna was kneeling. "I called your species weak," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "Believed that strength came from claws and scales and armor. I believed that humans were fragile, breakable, inferior." She looked at Tay, and there was something new in her eyes. something that looked almost like shame. I was wrong. She rose to her feet and turned to face the crowd. This human, she announced, walked through the path of flames without armor. He survived temperatures and radiation and gravity that would have killed any of our warriors. He did not stop. He did not surrender. He crawled through the crushing point with his bare hands because his legs would not carry him. He still reached the end. Her voice rang out across the hall, strong and clear. That is not weakness. That is strength beyond anything I have ever witnessed. The crowd murmured. Some of them looked uncertain, or others looked shaken, but many of them were nodding there, eyes fixed on the broken human who had done the impossible. Yuna continued. I have fought many enemies in my life. I have faced warriors with claws that could tear through steel. I have battled creatures with armor that could stop plasma bolts. But I have never faced anything as terrifying as what I saw today. She paused, letting her words sink in. This human walked into certain death and refused to die. His body failed him in every way, and still he kept going. That kind of will, that kind of determination, that kind of absolute refusal to accept defeat, that is not something to mock. It is something to fear. She turned back to Tay, who was still lying on the platform, barely conscious. The Vellery Empire accepts your alliance, she said, not because we pity your species, not because we think you are weak and need our protection, but because we now understand the truth. She extended her hand toward him. Any species that produces soldiers like you, soldiers who will walk through fire without armor, who will crawl through death itself for the sake of peace, that is a species we want as our allies. That is a species we respect. Tay looked at her hand. He tried to reach for it, but his arm would not move. His body had finally given up. Officer Na came running from the gallery, followed by a team of medical officers. They rushed onto the platform, their equipment already humming with healing technology. Na knelt beside Tay, her hands trembling as she helped the medics attach their devices to his broken body. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. Tay managed a faint smile. It hurt, but he did it anyway. Peace, he said, his voice barely a sound. That is all we ever wanted. Yuna watched as the medics worked on him, pumping healing fluids into his body, mending the worst of his wounds, keeping his failing organs alive. She had seen many warriors after they walked the path. She had seen them proud and triumphant, their armor scorched but their bodies intact. She had never seen anyone like this. She had never seen someone who had given absolutely everything, who had burned away every piece of himself. It's just to reach the end. She understood now why the war had lasted so long. She understood why the humans had never surrendered, never broken, never given up, no matter how many colonies burned. It was not because they were strong. It was not because they had better weapons or smarter tactics. It was because they had something the Vellery did not have, something that could not be measured in scales or claws or technology. They had heart. Weeks later, Tay woke in a Terran medical vessel. His body was wrapped in healing bandages, and machines hummed softly around him, monitoring his recovery. He felt weak, but he was alive. That was more than he had expected. A soft knock came at the door of his medical bay. Enter, he said, his voice still rough. The door opened, and Officer Na stepped inside. She was wearing a new uniform now, the uniform of a Vellery liaison to the Terran Alliance. Her scales seemed brighter than before, and there was a warmth in her eyes that had not been there when they first met. Sergeant Tay, she said, nodding respectfully. I am glad to see you recovering. Tay smiled faintly. Heard you requested a transfer to serve with us. I did. Na walked closer, standing beside his bed. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know what makes your species the way you are. After what I saw on the path, I could not go back to my old life. I could not pretend that everything I believed was still true. And what do you believe now? Tay asked. Na was quiet for a moment. She looked out the viewport at the stars streaming past. I believe that armor is just metal, she said finally. But courage is something else entirely. Tay nodded, looked out at the stars with her. That is right, he said softly. Courage is knowing you will break and walking forward anyway. Na smiled. It was a small smile, uncertain, but real. Outside the viewport, the stars burned bright and cold. The war was over. Peace had come at last, and somewhere in the galaxy, the story of the human who walked the path of flames without armor was being told and retold, spreading from station to station, from world to world. It would become a legend, and legends never die.